We are not here looking for a handout. We are here with a plan.
This was our land that you have come to. You know, we're not like other Canadians, and quit trying to make us like other Canadians.
If it's not going to be done in my generation, I have my son standing behind me who will take up the fight.
It's our land, our resources in the hands of our people.
Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. Today is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and we're bringing you stories of economic reconciliation. We're doing that by zooming in on one community, Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. We have stories of training programs for young Inuit, the impact of cruise ships in the Northwest Passage, and a special tour of the community's cultural center. But we begin today with a program that puts youth in charge of tourists from all over the world. Let me introduce you to the teenage tour guides of Cambridge Bay.
Hello, I am Tabitha. One of your tour guides for today.
The pride of our community. That's how these young people in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut are described by some of the adults in their lives.
Can we follow you?
Yep. Yeah, whole group.
Adventurers cruising through the Northwest Passage stop here to experience the Arctic. This year, there were 13 ships. Each one carries around 200 to 300 people. That's a lot, considering just under 1,800 people live in Cambridge Bay. The community is a hub for the Inuit region of Nunavut. Inuit have lived in this area for thousands of years, and the local teenagers are here to tell the tourists all about it.
This town is pretty old, but not that old. There's a lot of old artifacts, carvings, a lot of things, and they like to know about like how we get food supplies and all that.
With all the history and the beauty, often it's the basics that catch a tourist's attention.
The most question I've been asked about is the sewage lagoon. And I've had to explain it to them about how they dump it there and where it is. And they find it so fascinating. It's crazy.
These are the teenage tour guides of Cambridge Bay. They're athletes, and this is their biggest fundraiser of the year. The money they make here will help them train, travel, and compete.
It's just so much fun to play. We get to compete with other people. Places like Edmonton, Toronto, I get to go out and do stuff like this. And yeah, it's pretty much fun.
The program is run through the hamlet of Cambridge Bay. It collects a service fee per cruise ship passenger of $125. Some of that pays for catering. Each tourist gets a chance to try a taster plate of caribou, muskox, and char. Some gets donated back into the community to places like the church, which will sometimes open up so tourists can take a peek. And a big chunk, $50, goes to the sports teams.
Everything ends up here locally, and we don't keep any money. The municipality may not keep money from this. It totally goes into all kinds of community programs.
Angela Gerbrandt says the tour guide program provides many benefits, far beyond the fundraising.
They've really grown in confidence. They've become much prouder of their community, and all the time they are working with the sports team coaches.
And so the kids, basically, it's their community, and they know it better than anyone else.
That's their coach, Chris Crooks. He started a wrestling club in the community, but what he ended up with is much more.
And in the end, we create a family of where we feel that the youth can reach out to each other or to the coaches.
Crooks helps run sports mentorship programs in multiple communities and an after-school group for youth in Cambridge Bay. He also trains young Nunavut athletes to become coaches after they leave school and prepares them and his student athletes for life. Together, they talk about tough things that affect many northern youth, like mental health.
We talk about everything from financial planning, family planning, how do you buy a house to actually there's no topic we don't talk about. Drugs, alcohol, suicide is obviously, mental health is a big issue in Nunavut.
This June, the government of Nunavut declared suicide a crisis. It's the second time this has happened. Nunavut's government first declared a suicide crisis in the territory a decade ago. Life can be tough for young people in Nunavut. That's why it's so important to give people skills and hope.
There's a house down here where they have snow buntings.
In Cambridge Bay, that looks like this, giving young people responsibility, trusting them as ambassadors for the community, and providing them with opportunities to grow.
I've learned about myself that I like to talk, and
Yeah, you do.
and I do get quite shy, but you eventually have to put yourself out there, and I've done that, I'd say.
The tour guide program has been running for a few years now, and with more ships coming through, more youth will get the chance to show off their community. Megan Roberts, CBC News, Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. The Northwest Passage has long been a fabled route, and right now there's more ship traffic than ever. The Observatory on Politics and Security in the Arctic says there's a general increase of shipping in the Arctic, and we learned in Cambridge Bay that there are more tourists too. So how does that impact communities in the Kitimute region? For that, we go to the executive director of the Kitimute Inuit Association. Can you tell me from a community perspective what some of the impacts the cruise ships have, positive or negative?
Well, the cruise ships bring in a lot of people. I think the biggest expense they have is the cruise itself, and it benefits the communities in tours and things like that, and some sales of arts and crafts. I think the sales of arts and crafts, though, can be limited depending on where the cruise ship clientele come from, because of course there's sealskin bands, ivory bands, things like that. So some of the types of carvings that are produced here might not be able to be taken out by them. So I don't know if that limits what they can buy or not. But we're seeing more cruise ships come in, and this year I think we're going to have probably the most we've seen yet. I think there's about 11 cruise ship visits here, around there. So quite a few ships coming in about a 2-week period of time. When you're driving down the road, sometimes it's difficult as they take up the whole road walking. So that's one of the little cons, I guess, but just a minor one.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing the town expand. We did a bit of math for one of the cruise ships that came in, and I think it had expanded the town's population by around 10% for Cambridge Bay. So it's a huge impact just on even seeing people around. I wonder if you can tell me more about what communities are saying with this question of the Northwest Passage being open for longer, and whether or not that will bring more ship traffic and also more tourism and cruise ships.
Yeah, I think people are generally supportive that more ships might come in. I don't know if it's the cruise ships that people are more worried about. They might be more worried about the private yachts and sailboats. We don't know who the clientele are on all of those. Some of them are fairly sophisticated vessels. Some of them have their own submarines and things like that. So, the wrecks of Erebus and Terror National Historic Site, some of them could go there on their own and do diving or things like that, or maybe disturb the sites. We're fortunate that there's a Guardian program run out of Joe Haven to keep an eye on them, so that they can monitor the sites and ensure things like that don't happen. But they might, they could miss some ships that come through. Not all of the vessels use the beacon to show where they are. During COVID, there was one vessel transited through and was spotted by a spotter from Cambridge Bay that watches the Northwest Passage, and that person informed Canada. Canada wasn't aware that the ship was going through the Northwest Passage, and then they were able to to deal with that vessel. So having those guardians and whatnot out watching is very helpful and provides economic benefit for them as well.
First off, yikes about that ship. But second, tell me more about this guardianship program and how it's another economic opportunity or impact that these cruise ships and other ships have for communities.
Well, it's an employment benefit for the guardians, and their job is to monitor the wildlife, the water, the ice conditions, things like that, and report back to their HDO or to agencies like Parks Canada or DFO. So it helps the government, it helps the communities, and it ensures that when technological systems don't work, that there's always an eye on the ground looking out for things.
Yeah, it's the old-fashioned way of somebody who's just keeping an eye out and making sure that everyone knows where everyone is when it comes to the Northwest Passage.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with shipping up here, the concern is October to May type shipping, where they don't want to see any shipping, ice to be frozen with no breaks and things like that ships might cause. So right now with climate change, it's okay. There are no ships coming around that time. But if it warms up anymore, that'll become more of a concern. It hinders travel by residents who travel to the mainland for hunting and whatnot, and it also hinders the animals that migrate over the ice. And if the ice is broken, it's dangerous for them and for humans.
And if that ice breaking would be not necessarily cruise ships, but actual icebreaker ships, or what would break the ice?
Yeah, it could be icebreaker ships, possibly if there's other mines. And right now, the gold mines, they can fly out their product, but if there's mines like around the Mary River area where shipping is required, they might want to ship throughout the winter. If they had icebreakers that could do that, and we would ensure that we would want them not to do that. So, around here in this area, we have an agreement with shippers that there is no shipping from October to May.
And what would happen without this kind of ship traffic?
There'd be less people coming to our communities. Airline flights are quite expensive. I imagine it's probably cheaper to fly up here, but it's just a one-day trip. Whereas on a cruise, you're out for 2 or 3 weeks, and you see a lot of different communities. So I think the passengers that pay to go on those cruise ships want to experience different cultures, and all of our communities up here are a little different from each other. So each community has something different to offer.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. On a beach.
This is one local thing tourists can take home with no problems: coffee. Not exactly something the Arctic is known for. This is Kapitiak, which bills itself as the world's only Inuit-produced coffee. It's sold in Cambridge Bay's Cultural Centre, which is housed in the high school's library. Kapitiak means good coffee in Inuit, the language of the central Canadian Arctic. The nonprofit business was started by the Inuit Heritage Society in 2018, and 75% of the profits from this coffee go back into supporting cultural programs. Tourists often make a stop here to both shop and experience Inuit culture. We got a special tour of the Cultural Centre led by Emily Angulalik, the Inuit Heritage Society's executive director.
The mannequin show what life was like back then, and our seamstresses, past and present, were so skilled at creating these, the Mother Hubbard style. So looking at this Mother Hubbard parka, you wonder, like way back before Christian Klinkenberg and his wife, Kim Klinkenberg, he was a whaler, and then he became a trader way back in the early days. The people would wear the copper Inuit style clothing, the very first. But Kim Klinkenberg introduced the Mother Hubbard style here. So you can see that's the Alaskan Mother Hubbard style. But the woman found it a lot warmer to wear because it's right to your, right to your, and unlike the ones that, they wore back then. So when she introduced this style, then from then on, it's been carried down for so many years where, you can use you can make them as contemporary style Mother Hubbard parka now with with the covers and, the fabric that you can buy from the store. This is the longhouse. This is called the Dorset Longhouse. So, and since 1998, the archaeologist from University of Toronto would come up here. So this is like one of the first Dorset, longhouses that he had excavated, which was like 140 feet long. And this was actually like, way back, the timeline is so unique because it, the Inuit people, which is, the original Dorset people. So that the Inuit, the Dorset, the Inuit, and then the recent Inuit. So when you look at, when I look at the timeline, I was so amazed because the timeline would be as, far as 800 BC. So looking at the timeline of, the Dorset people, which really amazes me, and how technology, over the years have, been introduced by, the first Inuit. So the first Inuit had used the type of ads because their technology wasn't so keen. So they would sort of like chisel these arrowheads. You can see how old and not as, fancy as these guys over here. So this would be the, the Inuit, the more recent. So from the pre-Dorset culture, they were introduced around 2,500 years ago.
Wow.
So here, the earliest phase of the Dorset culture, they brought, the different technology. They noticed that their way of making the tools were much more fancier than, the very ancient. So that's how long, the existence of, the Inuit have, been inhabitant of our area. So this will be our Inuit Nocturne audio studio. So this is where we will conduct our it's still in construction right now. So we're building a Inuit Nocturne audio studio where we can conduct recording in Inuit Nocturne, stories, through podcasts and so forth. So this is what we are doing right now, so that we can continue recording and hear the sounds of Inuit Nocturne.
I love just the whole conversation around technology advancing. And I love that there's going to be a podcasting audio studio, which is its own advancement in technology, but with oral history, which is so ancient. Yeah.
Yes.
Right by the Arctic Ocean, there's a studio that turns trash into treasure. Redfish Arts Society is a former fish plant. It transforms scrap metal into art while teaching at-risk youth how to weld. Married couple Mark Slatter and Melissa Lawson founded the society, and now one of their original students is stepping in to teach others what he learned. Meet 23-year-old Daryl Taptuna Hayes. Tell me how you got started with Redfish here.
The Hamlet and the Justice Department had chosen a certain group of youth to become part of the program. I was actually one of those 10, 12 students that was chosen. And in the beginning, I did know the other students, but just being the shy young boy I was nervous. But as we all got around to working with each other, I actually became very sort of outgoing towards them. They're kind.
And with all the tourists coming in as well, you guys must learn how to kind of, chat with them and explain to them. Tell me what that relationship is like between you and the tourists.
So it's actually not that deep, but also it is. Once they do come on in and taste their meal, have a seat, we'll ask them how the cruise is going, if it's smooth, if it's rough. We'll ask them if they see any wildlife, how they're enjoying getting to see wildlife, what did they expect. Just some shallow stuff, but also once we get past that, we'll ask them where they're from, what it was like growing up there, and what they're thinking of Canada, what they're thinking about the North, how they're enjoying that.
And when they're coming in, they're purchasing things as well. So what does that traffic do for the operations of Redfish and the sales that you get?
Each and every sale, with every single purchase, all that cash flow goes straight back into the programming to help the program get any top-up tooling, consumables such as all our discs, all our consumables for our torches, any sort of gases that we might use such as acetylene, oxygen, or even our shielding gases for our welding machines.
And tell me more too about Redfish's role in the community. I know you are kind of part of the first cohort, and now you're teaching people the skills that you've learned. So, just tell me who comes through here. What kind of person comes through here?
So, rather it be a boy or girl, the program allows the ages from 18 to 30, which is the middle demographic, which is always forgotten up here.
Tell me more about that demographic.
So the demographic is the middle youth, like I just said. It's always forgotten or just set aside or even thought of as a group that should be able to support themselves, but it's never really given the opportunity to do so. And with the program here, it gives them that chance, it gives them that opportunity to provide for themselves so that they can move forward with any life expectancies, such as children, such as any unexpected health issues, any greater opportunities, such as trades course, or even mining life, or even culinary life, any direction that they want to go. We are here to mentor them. We're here to help them get in contact with whoever they need to get that opportunity going.
As somebody who's been through the program and also helped to take people through the program,
Yes.
What does it mean to you and to the people here to have this place that provides for this middle demographic that you talked about, where maybe there's a gap and people don't always get the support they need?
So, what it means is it helps them to get out of their comfort zone. It helps them get in contact with whoever they need to get an opportunity in anything that they need. What it means for the community is it helps the community get rid of any waste out in the landfill. It helps reduce anything from going into the landfill. It'll help generate a little bit of revenue for the town, for the hamlet, for any other local artists doing soapstone carvings, doing jewelry making, or even felting.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about the program, Daryl?
There's a lot, but one of the biggest things I can think of on my mind is recently Mark Slatter had been acknowledged by the Canadian Welding Bureau, which means he can help us boys in the program do any type of structural welding tests or accreditation. After we do get the accreditation, we get a ticket which can help the students get any type of work anywhere else in town or even out of town.
So it's a direct career path.
Yes,
That's
it sure
incredible.
is. Mm-hmm.
Daryl Koana, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And that is Northbeat for this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Thank you, Koana, for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We leave you with video from our time in Cambridge Bay. See you tomorrow.